We visited the least used station in Victoria, but before we begin, let's clarify a few things. This video will be based off the amount of annual passengers for the 2016-2017 annual period, as this is the most recent set of published figures. We will also not be including the overland stops of Stawell, Horsham, Dimbulla and Nil, as this is an interstate train and the fact that it only runs 4 times per week makes it unfair compared to the rest of the state's stations. So, what is the least used station in Victoria? Going off the 2016-2017 data, we can see that the least used station on the Victorian network at 884 boardings per year or 2.42 per day is Elmore on the Echuca line. Being in regional Victoria with only 1 return train on a weekday and 2 on the weekends, and with a population of just under 800, it makes sense for Elmore to be the least used station in the state. But it isn't. Although it tops the list with the lowest and only figure under 4 digits, it's actually not the least used station in Victoria. That honour goes to a station that isn't even included on the list of passenger statistics. If you cross off each station in the list of data on the V-Line map, you'll notice that one is still showing. Dingee is the only station in the whole state not to be included in these statistics. This is because its usage is so low that the statistics are not worth reporting or aren't even collected. This makes Dingee, not Elmore, the least used railway station in Victoria.
Dingee is located on the Swan Hill line and is the first stop after the Mikey Zone finishes at Eaglehawk, though a new station is currently being constructed at Raywood in between Dingee and Eaglehawk. This station is served by 2 return services per day. The morning services from Swan Hill and Melbourne, the late night service from Melbourne, the midday service from Swan Hill that runs Monday to Saturday, and the late afternoon service from Swan Hill on a Sunday. Dingee is a V-Line long distance stop requiring a reserved seating paper ticket. The trains currently operating this route are the V-Line N-Class locomotives, taking roughly 3 hours to travel from Melbourne to Dingee or 1 hour and 40 minutes from Swan Hill, give or take an hour for delays. The town was formed when the railway reached the area on the 21st of June 1883, with the station originally being called Toolambie being renamed Dingee on the 15th of October that same year. The name Dingee is believed to have originated from an Aboriginal word meaning star. In 1889, a school opened in the town. An extension to the Waranga Western Channel helped bring more agricultural activity towards the town, and rail line resulting in more development including a hotel and a church. On the 7th of March 1944, the station building was destroyed by fire, resulting in the construction of a new one. In the early 1950s, several schools around the area, including the school at Dingee, were closed and amalgamated into the East Loddon College, located 8 kilometres to the west of the town. Currently, Dingee has a population of 206, the town itself being much smaller, with many properties located in the surrounding areas. This also makes it the smallest town in Victoria with a railway station, not counting Murchison East, which only has a population of 135, but serves the town of Murchison located 2 kilometres from the station with a population of around 900.
To visit Dingee, we got up bright and early to catch a train into Southern Cross.
A couple of suburban stops to make to pick up some more passengers, and then our first drop-off point will be at Gisborne, followed by Woodend, Kyneton, Castlemaine, Kangaroo Flat, Bendigo, Eaglehawk, then followed by Dingee, Pyramid, Kerrang and Swan Hill, arriving Swan Hill approximately 12:22.
We do have a long train today. Once we've departed from Bendigo, there will be some short platforms. For those that don't already know about this, I will be making announcements prior to arrival. However, it is always imperative that you do check before disembarking the train that a platform is available to step onto. Once again, this is the 7:39 service through to Swan Hill, stopping at Gisborne, Woodend, Kyneton, Castlemaine, Kangaroo Flat, Bendigo, Eaglehawk, Dingee, Pyramid, Kerrang and Swan Hill.
After 3 hours of hills, viaducts, bushland and fields of grain, we finally arrived at Dingee station. With the platform only being about 50 metres long, only 2 and a bit carriages fitted here, and so to disembark we moved to the back of the train. Unsurprisingly, we were the only people to get off with no one getting on either. We then watched the train depart and round the corner to Swan Hill. So what's at the station? The station features an old weatherboard building which probably replaced the old station that burnt down in 1944. The Public Transport Corporation tried to sell the building in 1992, however this never happened. The building lay vacant until in 2017 a $500,000 upgrade, which included restoration and a new library inside the station building, was completed by the Andrews government. Jacinta Allen, the Minister for Public Transport, stated that this new library will be a huge asset to the Dingee community, providing them with a place to meet and learn in the heart of the town. It's great to see that buildings that would otherwise lay dormant are being used by the community while still retaining their heritage. If you would like to visit the library and take a look inside the station, it opens from 9:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. on a Tuesday each week. Other points of interest at the station include future infrastructure for Myki readers found at most long distance stations, as well as an old set of switches labelled up home and down home, most likely used to control the old semaphore signals once used at the station. Two of these signals, most probably the ones in use here, can be found out the front of the station. A disused siding and bits of ripped up track are found next to the station platform. This siding would have once served silos which have since been removed. However, an old grain storage shed is still there, currently being used by a fertiliser company. Other than that, the station has standard features such as timetables, a bench, station signs, tactile tiles, and a rubbish bin. As for the rest of the town, well, there isn't much. The town is essentially a crossroads, with only two roads running through it. One from the town of Rochester in the east to Serpentine in the west, and the other from Bendigo in the south to Pyramid in the north, the next stop along the line. A few houses line the main street as well as some abandoned structures. Of course, it wouldn't be a town without a pub, this one being named after the train line. Other than that, there is a general store, a church, hall, and a telephone exchange. That's pretty much it. After our train arrived, there was 4.5 hours until the next and only train back to Melbourne departed for the day, and so, to get back home, we caught a bus that only runs on Thursday back to Bendigo, and then the train to Melbourne.
So why is the station still in use? Our first thoughts were for commuters to Bendigo. The morning train from Swan Hill departs Dingee at 8:37 a.m. and arrives in Bendigo at 9:18, which could potentially be used by commuters. However, the train at the end of the day departs Bendigo at 8:26 and arrives into Dingee at 9:04. Dingee has a very limited service with only 2 trains in each direction per day and additionally a few buses per week, so to commute by public transport would be complicated and inflexible. Another question to ask is, would there be any demand for commuting in the first place? Looking at the census statistics for Dingee about industry of employment, it's clear that almost all the population works in some sort of farming industry, an industry where people often work on their own property or on nearby land, and one that generally requires a car. In fact, the statistics on how residents travel to work shows people only drive, work from their own property, or walk, and the statistics for number of motor vehicles shows that everyone in the town has a car. Even if a resident needed to get to Bendigo, although driving is only 3 minutes faster than the train if it's not delayed, it's still a much easier and more flexible option if needed, due to a very limited public transport service. The fact the station hasn't been closed in the past is ridiculous in itself. As part of the New Deal timetable in 1981, several towns on the Swan Hill line with higher populations had their stations closed. These included Lake Boga with a population of 985 and Raywood with a population of 318. But Dingee, a town with a population of 205, didn't have its station closed. In fact, 23 of the 35 stations that were closed as part of the timetable have a higher population than Dingee. So are there any explanations as to why the station is open? Well, perhaps there was some political influence as to why the town still retained a station whilst other larger ones did not. Another explanation could be that as part of the New Deal timetable, Raywood, Prairie and Mitiamo stations were all closed, which would have left an 80-kilometre gap between Eaglehawk and Pyramid if Dingee had also been closed. So perhaps Dingee was left open as a centre point for residents from surrounding areas to catch the train from, or to make the government's closures seem less widespread in this particular area.
So how many people actually use the station each year? Well, we can't be too sure as the statistics for it aren't published. However, there are some ways of being able to determine a rough figure for annual passengers. For example, Pyramid, the next station along the line, recorded an average of 7 boardings per day and has approximately double the population of Dingee. So, going off that logic, we can estimate that Dingee would serve less than 3.5 passengers per day. However, we also know that the station's statistic must be lower than Elmore's figure of 884 boardings and an average of 2.4 passengers per day. Given this statistic, Dingee should realistically serve 2 or fewer passengers per day, with an overall average probably being less than 1. With the station's usage being so low, is there really any point in it being open? Well, probably not. But will it close anytime soon? Probably not either. Infrastructure such as train lines and stations are things that people generally want to retain. It is popular opinion that they benefit the communities they serve, and so if governments take them away, it doesn't exactly please residents. Look at the cuts Jeff Kennett made to the network in 1993. Protesting was such an issue when the bandstyle service was cut that a landslide was blamed for the early cancellation of the Vinelander, when really this was just a lie to avoid a repeat of the protests seen in Gippsland. If the government closed the station, locals wouldn't be happy either. And seeing as the station saw upgrades and restoration recently, and other stations are reopening in the area, it is unlikely that the government will close Dingee. So that was the least used station in Victoria. But before we wrap things up, I'd just like to thank everyone who has subscribed recently. I've really enjoyed making this content, and getting to 100 subscribers has also really helped with my motivation for creating videos. So thanks to everyone who has subscribed, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.
Was that Jacinta Allen MP on the platform? The question of the day is, did we see Jacinta Allen MP at Eagle Hawk Station?